Hello, and welcome to the Smash Ultimate Stage Modding tutorial. I want to highlight what we won't be going over first so that, you don't get too confused or you were, anticipating I was going over something and then you got to the end of the video and then, I didn't go over that. So, firstly, this won't be going over custom collisions or stage gimmicks, referred to as LVD edits, or anything that involves the STDAT file. If you don't know what those terms are, we'll come across them later. This is strongly just on a stage-by-stage basis, so, if I showed how to edit Smash fills, you might not be able to take those same concepts to, I don't know, New Donk City. I won't be going over animations as it's mostly similar to how character animations work, but with, some caveats involving stage coding on specific models. Just a lot of the things that I won't be going over are, stage by stage basis things. Lastly, I'm assuming you have some familiarity with Smash Ultimate modding, just in general. So if I told you to make a shiny blue DK mod, you'd say, yeah, that's easy. I'll also keep a glossary in the transcript of this video, so if I say anything weird like a Smush Blender, you can look at what that might mean. Before we start, we'll have to download several things, and I mean several. This is mostly just following the README guide just listed here on the... I'll post a link to this repo, which is very important for this mod, or this video. But you'll often want to, when you want to download something that's like one of these GitHub projects, like I want to say this one is okay. Usually when I say something like, download from source or download from the repo, it's just you go to this green button right here and then you click download zip. So it won't be showing how to just, download and install everything, but the programs you'll want are pretty much all of these listed here, including the optional but recommended. I also have a list on the stage site, as well as, these that might come to use for. So, if you wanted to get into Switch Toolbox for texture editing, you'll want to download these as well. Alright, so the first thing we probably want to do with all the high concept stuff is bookmark this site. This is where I just keep a repo of like all of my various findings across a few stages, as well as just like if you need like a material, like here's where you can find a bunch of the shaders that I use throughout the game, as well as just like a glossary of like just different terms that you might commonly come across when modding stages. But let's go ahead and actually look into what a stage folder looks like. So this is Battlefield. This is actually a little bit of a unique one because its battle folder doesn't really contain anything because, it's Battlefield. But normal folders are their normal version, like their hazards on, hazards off stuff, while the battle folders are the Omega and the Battlefield forms. This is why you can't really have, one mod that's only for Omega and another mod that's for the Battlefield, because they both share the same battle folder. Jumping into it, we'll have a bunch of these folders. Sometimes they won't have these spirit floor things. Those are mostly just spirit mode things. You can sort of ignore those for mods. But we have the effect folder, and this just kind of has a XMB file that kind of just tells the game spawn this type of effect at this position with these parameters. The LUT file, which is kind of like color correcting or, special stuff like the mod that turns Kirby Dream Land into either black and white or just the full Game Boy green aesthetic. We have the model folders, just like fighters, just their polygons, the actual models themselves. Motion folder for the animations. The param folder, we won't be touching this that much just because this is, mostly dealing with making customized collisions and stage layouts. You can see the LVD file, which is the collisions, STDAT, which stage data, kind of depends from stage to stage what it might contain, but it's parameters that designers can change. And then the stage param file, which sometimes you can play around with when you're just making the stage, which deals with like a FOV stuff, stuff that might affect camera or rendering, or other special effects like final smash positions. And then lastly is the render folder. This is probably an area of interest for some folks, that this deals with lighting. So we have things like the Chara ship or spherical anim, which is shik anim if you want to say that fast. The shik anim files kind of just deal with the lighting that's built into Smash Ultimate, the whole engine, where it's like they use these spherical points to emulate like how light should kind of spread or create an ambiance for. Chara ones are for characters. There's also E Chara and B Chara, which is for E for the Omega or End, and B for Battlefield. The stage one, that's just for the general stage, so any stage elements that isn't a character. Reflection cube map, that's the reflected texture that you'll see on various materials like the ink that Inkling kind of rolls onto the stage, as well as, if you get a metal box or if you got a really shiny metal character, then you'll see that this reflection in that texture. Render param, admittedly, I don't really touch this that much, but it's got a lot of things to do with certain graphic effects, like, how light should be color corrected, how like sun flares. I think there's like a little bit of lens flaring as well, or like sun gazing and stuff. Again, I don't really touch this that much. Lope, this is for the magnifying glass that you'll see when fighters are too far off stage. Another one that I don't really touch too much. Light, this one's also a very important one. This contains a whole animation file, and this animation file actually controls how lighting is perceived. I'll probably going over, changing lighting a little bit later. But you can see that this is a very large file compared to usually most of them only have like, a couple kilobytes, and that's because Battlefield does have a whole solar eclipse cycle where it does change a little bit of lighting, I believe. Some of it's done through its STDAT file, but some of it is also in conjunction with this file too. The short is, if you wanted to change a stage's lighting, you might want to look at this file in particular, or, whatever is in the light folder, as well as, other stuff in the render folder. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to first unzip the modding tutorial zip file. When you do, it should look something like this. But for the scene that we're working on, we are going to use something from Kirby's Return to Dreamland. Sometimes when you want to work off of, making stages, that's the kind of folks that upload stuff to the models resource have you covered. So we're going to be working off of this file right here. It is the Sea Cave background, so we want to say thank you to Peardian for this model. I know that they actually upload quite a lot of stuff here, so huge thanks for being able to make this resource public for our tutorial. Once you've got that downloaded, I already got that downloaded, you'll want to go ahead and grab the textures. So it'll probably look like this. I'm going to go ahead and grab all these textures, copy them, and then open this cave folder and paste them right here. That's just so that our version of Blender can actually read in these textures. Right, so here's the modding tutorial folder proper now. It contains a folder called None, this one right here, and this just contains like a bunch of empty or blanked, as we call it, files. I should change this. anytime that you put one of these two files in a given stage's model folder, it will turn that invisible. So if you don't need to see something like, I don't know, the battlefield's plants or water, you can go ahead and plop these two in there. There's one caveat, which is town and city villagers or Smashville villagers. We have to just do this file, but you know, a lot of case-by-case stuff here. Also inside our folder, we have the bf.day and bftransition.day. These are just low-poly models of the battlefield, just taken from their transition models from, you know, the whole stage swap mechanic. This is just really good for getting the scale of your background, or even the scale of your main ring if you're making a custom main ring. So that, also the orientation too, in case you're working within Blender and you don't know, and you end up exporting your whole scene and then it's, turned around the wrong way. So these are very handy to just kind of import into your scene and then just, make sure that they're not selectable so that you can just work around these models. Alright, so we're going to be working with Great Cave Offensive. So let me go ahead and get up Arc Explorer. And this is the tool that we use, again, to obtain assets. It exports everything to its own export folder. Eventually it will come up. There we go. Alright, so this is a Arc Explorer. It's connecting to my Arc. Let's go to Stage. We're working off of Great Cave Offensive, so we need to go into Kirby Cave. And then we're working with the battle version of everything. So what I usually do is just, right click, hit extract file, and then we'll go ahead and copy all those files from our Arc Explorer export folder over to our working directory. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead, and I've already made a little workspace for me under this tutorial folder. I'm also going to do stage. I'm trying to essentially just mimic this just like one of the mods. Like, when you download a mod, you put in your ultimate mods folder, and you'll have something like, fighter, and then it has like UI, or you have a fighter and then a model. We're just essentially just kind of mimicking that right now. So we can just easily transfer this entire folder over to the Switch. Okay, so we have the stage folder. I believe it was Kirby Cave. And then battle. Ooh, that's one too many T's. Battle. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead on this other side. Stage, Kirby Cave, battle. Here's what it looks like in my Arc Explorer, where it actually has all of the folders. I'm not gonna be focusing too much on these two, just because I don't really play with spirits on, so sorry about that. What I also don't need the LUT folder per se. If you want to mess around with just, how the colors rendered a little bit, you can go ahead and include this. The main ones that I'm just concerned about is the model and the render folders. I'm gonna go ahead and copy those over. And in the model folder, you can kind of see these are kind of like the whole structure for the Great Cave Offensive. Not all of these, we don't need all of these. I'm gonna be keeping the Omega platform and its Battlefield triplats the same, but I'll just keep these in for reference. We're not gonna be messing with this folder, which is kind of like just the it's kind of like the Sky Dome or the Skybox for it, so we don't actually need this here. Transition temporary, that's the model that appears during like a stage transition, if you remember that that's a feature in this game. I don't need this right now. Hikari set is actually one of these folders that I want to blank out. So, let's see. Here, this folder in our little modding tutorial one. We have our little none folder. Remember that from a couple seconds ago? I'm gonna go ahead and remove everything here. I'm just gonna take the num.atb and the num.dilb. The atb is the material file. It has like all the lists of your textures, and the materials, and then the there'll be the mesh or the model folder, which is like, oh, assign this material to this mesh. So if they're both blank, then this means this entire Hikari set is now invisible. For the most part, we'll be working out of this STC state, cave VG. We also don't need these textures because we're going to be working with our own texture. So let's actually get to work with Blender now. Make sure you've already downloaded the whole Sharp Smash Suite Blender add-on and you've installed the plugin before going into this. But, you know, if you have, you should see this little panel on the right-hand side. I'm also using I'm using like the industry standard short keys. I'm, you know, not doing the keyboard like every other Blender tutorial is. But yeah. What we want to do is we want to just convert all of this into something that we can actually use in Smash Ultimate. We kind of want to just optimize and like combine all the materials that are the same together. Do a bunch of things that you would kind of see in the official game itself. And my set of programs right here is going to do almost all the heavy lifting for us. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to be joining all those objects together. So all the way here in our first collection, we're going to select all of these polygons together. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit join like objects and then hit OK. And so now you see that we've gone from like what, 200 or something polygons to just this amount of polygons. If you happen to have like one of those models from like a different game where, you know, they combine, like you'll have like one mesh but it has like 2 or 3 different materials just because of like blending materials or just saving on the mesh space, so you might want to click on this separate and preserve materials button, but luckily these are all independent. Next, what we want to do is we're going to actually just kind of trim away some of these extra ones. This light 2 here, I'm not sure if we can get this effect to really work well in Smash, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete it. Same thing with the little water refraction stuff right here. I'm also going to go ahead and delete those as well as just because, you know, this is a tutorial. This is kind of like our very first model import, so we want to keep it relatively simple, but still kind of include some of the cool features that this stage has. Alright, with those gone, I'm going to go ahead and select everything again. I'm going to go ahead and hit this export material list button. What this does is it creates a text file that basically tells my programs that this mesh, or like this material needs this texture, and it uses all of these meshes that we selected. I'm going to go ahead and hit export material list, and where are you? Aha. Here is the, you know, our own modded background under STC Cave BG. I might just refer to this as like Cave model from now on. Go ahead, enter, and then hit export material list. And just to make sure, where are you? There it is. There's our material list now. Okay, so before we exit out of Blender, let's go ahead and export this as a day file. Go ahead, hit export day, and then under the presets, I pretty much have this already saved on my own preset, but we want to make sure you have these settings. We only want to deal with our current selection, so no extra, you know, polygons get included into this, particularly the transition models, and then we want to change the axis orientation just because this is how StudioSB kind of deals with things. We also don't really need anything about the textures, so I'm going to go ahead and export this to, let me export this here, one step above it, and do cave.day. And then now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and open up StudioSB. Here's what it looks like. Let's go back to that cave folder. And currently our cave folder looks like this, just like the base game texture, except, or model, except we don't have any texture, so that's why everything is white right now. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and delete these meshes, just because we don't need those anymore. And we're going to go into File, Port, Model, one step above, cave.day. I'm gonna choose to flip the UVs. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I usually find that flipping UVs works the best. I also want to just keep optimize on. Second, use skeleton. That's okay. And here is our model. It doesn't actually have any textures, but here is pretty much the model that we have right here. Before exporting, saving this, I'm going to select all the polygons here. And again, I'm just clicking and then shift clicking. Under export color set 1, we want to set that to true. And the reason we want to do that is because a lot of stage materials expect a vertex color on the first map, which is, just like the first vertex color. It doesn't need to actually have any data per se, but it just needs to export that as, it could be useful for, like, if you want to change the color on some of the crystals, or, if you want to kind of go in and add that extra polish for vertex colors. Yeah, that works perfectly, but right now we're just going to export color set 1 without any data to it. I'm going to save it to the STC cave background. Yeah, I know it exists. I don't need to export the skeleton because, that right. Alright, so now we've got the model in. A big issue here is, how do we get our textures in? What we're going to do is we're going to open up the sharp dash suites folder. Say that 10 fast. If I'm correct, I have everything just completely blank here. This is a first run. What I want to do before anything is I'm going to go into image to text feed GUI. Actually not. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to open up the Sharp Smash Suite repo that we downloaded. This should be a fresh one. So what we want to do first is we want to run this program here first. The image to text feed GUI, and just because we need you can't see it on the screen, what a shame. It's saying on my side, image to text feed exe not found, so what we need to do is we need to go ahead and search for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and find that. I have it on my own repo, so I'm gonna navigate all the way over there. Oop. Here's the exe, and now it gives us this. We actually do, because we're using a little special shortcut of mine, we don't need to mess with this too much, but in case you're curious, this is where you put all your textures into this list, set the directory for finding images, the destination is where you want the images to go. But we're going to use a handy dandy little shortcut of mine, which is sharpsuite.py. And this does everything you need to in just one fell swoop. This is the magic program right here. Alright, so first it's going to ask to make sure that we imported our model already via StudioSB, which we did. And we saved that materials.txt file to the models folder, which we also did. Let's go ahead and click OK. Because this isn't my main display, you're not seeing that. It says select your models folder. Multi-monitoring is great for being productive, but maybe not so much for recording videos. Where did our model folder go? It should be this one right here, right? Yeah, there it is. So I'm going to go ahead and copy, paste. And then it's gonna ask me for the folder with the images, which that is, I believe, in my downloads folder, Cave, this one right here. It'll go through and convert all the images, and then you should be getting this message at the end where it says that all the folders or all the textures have been converted and that the model and the materials are set up properly right now. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up SSBH editor, and this is our program for changing really good for changing material files and just viewing a lot of things. This is an amazing program. Let's go ahead and open that Cave folder. And you can see a whopping difference because now this is like all the textures actually, put into our little model. And this is the one that doesn't have it. I'm going to, just because I know I might do something weird, I'm going to go ahead and double click on this in case, for whatever reason, I decide, oh, I might as well just overwrite this file that I'm working on. It's happened before. So this looks decent. There's a few things that we're gonna have to go over when it comes to changing the model. So what I want to do is, I'm gonna be referring to my little website. Oh, I have so many tabs. This website. Oh, it idling it for a little bit. This website right here, under these shaders, this is just kind of the list of shaders that I use. Because I've already set most of these as presets in my SSBH editor, I won't be going over, oh, I'm going to look at this, like the whole process of me looking and trying to find the material. I'm just going to put the preset in, but for reference, I'll try to refer to them as, where it got the shader from. So on your end, you can go ahead and find some of these shaders. Most of the ones that we're looking for is this PS2 Lite one. This one's very important. You should grab, just in general, you should be grabbing the scrolling textures. I'm going to be working with this one right here. And then I want to say we will also get into this SFX Ring City Metal. This one is like really important to have, especially if you want to go on to create your own main rings, rings that the players actually fight on. So let's go back to the SSBH editor, and what I want to do is I'm going to, so many of these running, I want to change, let's see, open the map B. Blue light, you need to be changed to the PS2 light material. And then because I went from diffuse, because I went from diffuse to emissive, it's gonna lose that texture. Good thing that the material name is the same as the texture name, huh? Let's go ahead and also dim this down a little bit. If I'm correct, if I do 0.2, make sure you press enter. 0.2, 0.2, be good enough. The problem with this particular shader is if you leave it at 1 by 1 by 1 for the emission color, it's gonna glare really. It's gonna really just glare. You'll notice it like blinding. Same with this one. You are also going to be PS2 light, and instead of going all the way down, do like a nice even 0.75, 0.75 by 0.75. Make sure you set the texture correctly. After a few edits, I'm going to go ahead and click this file save button, just because I don't want my progress to be forgotten or I just forget to save. Next, what I want to do is, with these crystals, I realized that the main ring actually has a much better crystal texture, so let's go ahead. Here you go. There you are. Let's go ahead and from the main ring, go ahead and copy these two files right here. We're going to copy these, bring them over to the cave. I'm going to hit, so let's see. Yeah, they should be right there. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and hit Control R to refresh, just because I need these Bimsy crystal files to be accessible. So instead of using these kind of weird crystal textures, under crystal, what I want to do is set the material to this town ring metal one, the one that I said was really important. And we're gonna switch it to the Bimsy materials, and look at that. Looks a lot better. If you want to, you can kind of just play around with some of these values. I'm just gonna change the reflectance. PRMs are kind of like PBRs that kind of determine how light affects a material. You can honestly just kind of, there's probably a few YouTube videos on, like, details on what PBRs do. I won't be going over that in this video. There's quite a few more that we gotta do here. Where's my handy dandy list? Pillar light 2. Ooh, no, not pillar. Ooh, pillar water 2. This is gonna be a PS2 light, and you might be wondering, okay, wait, what's so special about this PS2 light? Why I'm using this shader in particular mostly has to do with the way that this texture is. You kind of see it's like black, and then there's like the blue coloring over here. In some, Wii games, instead of like having actual transparency, you'll often see, like this black should be representing what should be transparent, and then this blue or colored area is like the actual light. So we want this, because this is like pillar water, we kind of want this to represent the light coming out from the water. Don't worry, this will all kind of come together a little bit more clearly in just a little bit. This is like kind of just like a general overall preview of what it could look like in game, and you'll see like a drastic difference when we actually put this into the Smash Ultimate engine. The big one that we have to go over are the light reflection and the water zero materials. So this one right here, this is kind of like the cute little glare effect. We want to use a scrolling texture for these, actually. So let me go ahead, make sure I've got my notes down perfectly here. Alright, so material, apply presets. I want to say Gower Plains one. Yep, okay, so now we have a whole bunch of different values, instead of like for our very basic bare bones shader, where it's kind of just like, these custom vectors. A lot more is involved with a scrolling texture. The one that we want to look at the most is this custom vector 6 here. Z and W control how fast it will scroll in a particular direction. So let me change this to negative 0.25, so it kind of scrolls down in a slightly faster manner. And I'm going to go ahead and save, because I don't think I've done that in a while. And next is the water one, water. And the water one, we're going to set this to that same texture. We're going to do something a little different to this. The render pass, instead of a sort, we're going to do a far render pass. And you can see how before when we did sort, it did like this little defining thing right here. And now we do far, and it forces this texture to be on top of the other one. This is just, what we have to deal with when it comes to alpha. It's honestly tough to get into, like, all the specifics of alpha. It's really hard to work with in Smash Ultimate, just every modern game engine in general, as we've gotten more unique, more intricate with our rendering system. But for this scrolling texture in particular, we want to render the water first, and then render this little light effect on top of it. So far gets rendered first, and then sort gets rendered after that, so that results in this being on top of the water. Alright, so with that little explanation out of the way, go ahead and change this to a negative 0.1. This is going to be a little bit slower than the actual little effect we've got right here. Go ahead and save that as well. And I believe, should be good for right now. I'll be going over a little bit towards the end, better common practices for working with like materials and stuff like that, because this is a really good just my first mod kind of thing. But yeah, now let's go on to lighting. All right, so when we're working with lighting, we want to deal with things in our render folder. Because this is kind of like a dark cave, what I actually want to do is I want to take from a different stage. Let's do Dracula's Castle. No reason in particular. Nope, none at all. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna, well, first I want to look at this light folder right here. Make sure that these names line up. We'll be working with this in a little, just a short bit. But, okay, that looks good. So now I know I can kind of just copy over most of these. We don't have a cellophane thing, so we don't need to worry about that. Go ahead and copy and paste. So now instead of using the Crate Cave Offensive's kind of bright, gloomy lighting, we'll be using a little dark and gloom from the Dracula's Castle. I also want to change a little bit about these lighting properties. So if you've downloaded the whole SSPH data JSON thing, you should see these two programs. I'm going to go ahead and drag light into here. And then I'm going to open that up. See all the other things I've been using this program with. But this is kind of how you edit lighting in Smash Ultimate. It's much easier if you've got like a static lighting system as opposed to something that like is affected by like a time and day cycle or has like an animation to it. There's a whole page I'll link at the below where you can learn about these values, but what we want to look at here is lighting chart. So this is for the characters, and then stage, and then another stage one. They're just different sections of the same stage. I want to just slightly, I don't want to do anything too fancy here. I just want to just decrease the lighting just a little bit. Nothing, too polished up, just enough that you can kind of see, this is how I would change the lighting. What I'm doing here is custom float 0 just represents the, the amount of lighting they'll receive. So if I decrease the value, that means a little less light will be shown. And then if I increase it, then it'll start blooming like crazy. Let me go ahead and drag this over here again. That creates this file. Delete the old, rename the new, and that's how we put lighting in. Alright, so before we're ready to export this, we need one last thing. I'm going to go into here. One more. Perfect, right here. This is kind of like our mods workspace that we've been working on, and we need our handy dandy sharp smash sweet thing again. Wherever I put it. Let me find it again. Perfect. Here we go. We need this. We want to use lazy config. This will just write a config.json for all your file addition and directory addition needs without you having to lift a finger. So I'm going to double click it. It's going to ask select your model's main folder, which is that thing that we copied over from before. Then you can see right there that it created it for us. And just a double check. I mean, I know it's perfect, but here it is. Here are all the added files that we have. We don't need this materials.txt one. We just have that left over from our program, but hey, it's there, I could open up another folder of that. All right, so now everything is actually ready to just put into the switch. I don't have my switch hooked up right now, but my recommendation is, you just put this tutorial folder over to your Ultimate Mods, of course you'll want to get rid of the day folder. You also don't need the float and the main ring ones. And then lastly, on your Switch, there's a few of these files that, get ignored. This file, we aren't really working with this file, so we don't need that one. We don't need the skeleton, and we don't really need this file as well. So these four, as well as the materials, you can just kind of get rid of on your Switch. You might still need them in your workspace, but you can get rid of these on your Switch and everything's just still run fine. If you're using Directory Edition, then you might need, this file, the XMB, the skeleton file. I want to say you need this file, but I don't think you need the helper bone file for stages. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and hook up my Switch and see our results. Alright, so, honestly, pretty good for just, a first simple mod. This is, yeah, yeah. This is all just from, the heavy lifting on my program and just a little bit on the background. So, like, again, as far as, like, a first mod, like, this is really good. What I would recommend is just kind of, I'll go over, like, in just a couple seconds about, best practices, because, like, while this is, you kind of, oh, was he doing? Really, what are you doing, man? While we kind of have these flat textures in the background, and we also didn't really go over much of the main stage, there's also, like, a few other things, like, the texture files that we created are actually, pretty on the unoptimized side, just because they're using the wrong formats. But in just a couple moments, let me go over, better practices, and I'll probably just add, like, a text file or whatever to just kind of show what we've done. Alright, so there's a reason why we worked on this background element rather than something like a whole main stage, and that's just because our prototyping little shader, we kind of see it throughout here, like in this one right here. This is a very bare bones shader. You can tell because, like, this doesn't, support, like, any normal maps or PRMs, or, it doesn't even support any shadows, as opposed to, let's see, Crystal. This one, you see, it has, normals, PRMs, it has a little bit more polish and flair to it. And what's also very notable is our file sizes. So these are the ones that are, from the main ring, and then these are the ones that we just imported. And just because, the images that we worked off of were PNGs, the whole NetXP conversion automatically converts it to this file format here. It's called a R8, G8, B8. This is essentially just a bad one, as you can tell by the huge change in size between these two. So what I would do on your end is go ahead and just manually, hit right click, replace with the image. It'll ask you which kind of format that you want, and you want either EC1 sRGB. This is just for kind of like lower end stuff that you don't need too much detail for, or the BC7 variant, which gives you a little bit more detail but costs just a little bit more on size. And that will save a lot on performance, especially when you start converting a whole slew of textures, and then you actually will see some frame rate dips in your game. Also, another big thing I want to go over is make sure that, you as a modder, or, if you're even commissioning or doing a commission, never just do this whole, one-click solution where, we clicked on the Sharp Sweep button and then it did pretty much most of this for us. And we can remember in the beginning when we were starting this out how it didn't even look like this at all. Like, most of the textures were all black and whatnot, and like there weren't any alpha sorting and stuff like that. That's just like the whole mark of just very low quality stuff. That's stuff that could, it should be flagged, where it's just like, oh, I just pressed a button and made it work, but probably won't be going that ham on flagging stuff. But yeah, just make sure that you're, zhuzhing it up just at least a little bit. We did with the whole scrolling textures here. We can go so much further with this mod, but just as like our cute little first, hey, this is our very first stage mod thing. Again, this is very good as a tutorial, so when you're doing your future imports of backgrounds and stuff like that, what I want to see is a little bit more quality in the texture. So if something needs transparency, you would add that in. If something, is like a glass texture or deserves some sort of reflectance, put that in. Or if you're working off of like an old game from like, N64, even like GameCube Wii, maybe make some effort into like upscaling the textures just to make it look a little bit better with the rest of Smash Ultimate. Alright, so now to the actual, best practice thing. I'm pulling up Guy's Sanctuary here. We could just look at an in-game example, honestly, but I also want to show you, what we can do on our end, essentially. Like, how, like, if you put enough time and dedication that you could get something that is, like, looks pretty much as close to official as possible. And you can just kind of look at just like the main ring area up in front. You can see, as well as the kind of background areas, you kind of see like the whole difference in quality that is going on here. Most of this is just from a performance standpoint, and in game it's going to look a little bit different than what we're viewing here. To save on performance, what we'd like to do is we want to keep like our nice looking materials here. You can kind of see like the nice little gloss and normal maps that are coming out from the main ring stuff. And then as you kind of go into the background, the quality kind of just, fades just a little bit, and that's just because we can use techniques with like lighting and fog. And, since the player's attention will be mostly just honed in like right here, we can kind of get away with, saving resources by making these textures in the back, or these shaders in the back, a little less on the quality. So you can see in the, which is pretty much like a standard for every main ring, is that they should have, all these textures should have like either like a normal map and PRM, or some sort of baked element to it. And with baked element, you can't actually see here. I have to turn the render settings to texture 3. So here I've baked some ambient occlusion, so it adds, so you can't see it in the render, but in game it adds this little depth to stuff, like right in between like each crevice of the model itself, and adds this nice layer of detail, even into like some of the background elements too. The ones in the way back, because we don't have to worry about those. They can just kind of remain that kind of flat texture. But again, it's a lot about just having this quality up in front when it comes to adding these PRMs, normal maps, and I know I didn't go over like creating PRMs. That's kind of like a whole ordeal unto itself. But if your game is like a modern one that comes with PBRs or normal maps, you'll definitely want to include these here. And it's the same thing with the trees. These are actually very simple transparency shaders, but at one point I probably will add some sort of vegetation sway to them, and that's just to make this whole area that our fighters will be playing on more immersive. That's our favorite buzzword here. Another important thing is also making sure that the various shaders here support some sort of shadowing, because when your fighters are landing on the ground, you want to make sure that they there's some sort of like with the shadows, it's like, oh, our fighters are on this position of the stage. Without shadows, you'll be able to kind of see, it's a little bit hard to see exactly where a player is on the platform. It's a whole thing in 3D platformers, but if you want to see if something has or might be able to support, shadows, I think, I want to say TNN mentioned something about this 8 number right here. If it has this 8 number, it probably does. You can also just pull from, other main rings, like, we were working with Great Cave Offensive earlier, so it probably has shaders that support shadows. So make sure that for all your main ring stuff, this is where you want to put all your polish and zhuzhing up, where your PRMs, maybe special scrolling textures like I have for the really small, barely visible water right there. Or the little warp point right here. This is a scrolling texture back there, as well as like nice little vegetation. Or if you want to go the extra mile, probably looking into the vegetation sway that Wispy Woods has. And then, you know, for the background elements, you know, these ones, you know, it's got a simple just diffuse or a little color texture on it. But also went the extra mile and added some baked ambient occlusion here. Then all the way in the back and kind of just, you know, do very simple textures, and it will all look very nice in the very end. And that's just because, you know, players won't be able to be looking like straight in this direction, so you kind of get away with stuff like that. Alright, so now you know how to import a background in Smash Ultimate. We also went over, you know, how to improve the quality of materials, as well as just, you know, some best practices if you want to become the next top stage modder. We didn't touch the entire Sharp Smash suite. Where's my handy dandy thing? You know, stuff like the Mappy GUI and LVD spec. I don't know if that's included in the repo. These stuff we don't need to go over too much. Lazy Matte, this is basically for if you have like a whole list of textures that are like normals and PRMs, and you want to pull up a whole Excel spreadsheet and organize your files that way. You can do that. I used to love doing that. I still even do that occasionally for some of these files here. Metric model, you kind of just use that briefly for, you know, once you have the file or the whole stage that you want exported and import into StudioSB, you just run this thing, and then it will, you know, assign it'll rename files and assign textures and materials to where they should be, just based off the mesh's name. The image to text GUI thing, this will be good for, you know, once you have all these, you know, PRMs and normal maps, you'll just take the materials list from here. What we want to do is just essentially just copy over these entries here into the UI on the right side, and then it'll just go through the process of converting everything for you. And then lastly is the UI retrieve. I know I didn't go over UI specifically, but what you want to do here is, you know, you'd export your in Arc Explorer, you'd export the UI replace and replace patch stuff for stages, and then with this you'd want to, I probably can run through it right now. So right now it's saying select my mod's main folder. That's somewhere here. Oh, right here, perfect. It's just like we did with lazy config. Gonna go ahead and tell me that it figured out that this was the Kirby Cave stage, and so just like that, boom, here's all the UI for our stage. So, you know, what you want to do is, you know, in Switch Toolbox, you want to open all of these up and then, you know, replace it just like you would character UI, except it's a lot easier when it comes to like alpha stuff, because these are rather simple. Let me open this up. Computer is doing its best right now. Yeah, these like just relatively simple textures. Also, when you want to replace UI for stages, again, instead of doing this BC7 uniform thing, you'll want to do the BC7 sRGB format so that it keeps its quality. But yeah, thank you for sitting through all of this, or even just skimming through all of this, honestly, you know. Just make sure that you make stage mods whenever you're making them. Just please put some, just a little bit of expert. You don't have to go all in when it comes to, like, you know, baking AO, but, you know, at least go the effort of, like, you know, putting in PRMs and normal maps, so that our whole little section of stage mods in Game Banana is not flooded with just shiny blue DK mods, but for stages, like, I don't know, like shiny blue Battlefield, that would be our mod. But no, make sure that you're not making a, you know, the next shiny blue Battlefield, you know. If you take pride in your work, people will appreciate it, and if you cut corners, people will notice it for the wrong reasons. And again, a big thank you to the folks that have kind of supported my whole Ko-Fi to get this whole modding tutorial in. There it is. And we've much reached our goal. In particular, I want to thank Chrispo, T2PO, Boop, and 4 Days. Huge shout out for being able to fund this tutorial. Mostly because I just wouldn't have the time between all the stuff that I'm doing with, this guy right here and other projects, but I'm glad that through all of our efforts that we finally have a stage tutorial in the hands of the community. And again, a huge shout out to Peardian for being able to upload a whole bunch of assets onto the models resource that we've been using for this tutorial. So, give them a shout out, maybe send a comment or, a big thank you for teaching me about, indirectly teaching me about stage tutorials in Smash Ultimate. But yeah, this has been C Sharp. Take care and mod responsibly.